Yeah, absolutely. And when we're building this game plan for retirement, just like building a house, we're going to start with a foundation, right? We want something that's rock solid. We want that to be able to withstand anything. It's got to hold the rest of the portfolio up.
And welcome into your game plan for retirement with Chris McIntire. He is the president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, your resource, ladies and gentlemen, for a common sense approach to planning for your financial investment and retirement future. And we always appreciate the time, Chris, giving us insight on the financial world, what we need to be doing with our money, the strategies that we should consider in order to make further financial progress. Always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for being here. How's life in Chris's world?
Hey, life in Chris's world's pretty good here. I got some aging parents, as you know, we've been dealing with, helping getting them set up and all of that. And we'll probably have a show where we talk about tying up loose ends and all that. But my tip of the week, Peter, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in there real quick with a quick tip of the week is, we've seen a lot of volatility in the stock market. We saw silver kind of have, let's call it a flash crash, and then even some of the software companies here, some companies are dropping 10% in a day. So there is some volatility in the market there. But just remember your portfolio, in your retirement plan are interconnected. For us and a lot of our clients, we have a safe money strategy in case the investment piece comes under pressure and we don't want to pull any money out of that. We can switch over and go to the safe piece. All of those elements tie in with, your Social Security timing, the pension option you took, and many other facets, how we draw income off of it. So, you're always going to have volatility in the stock market or in the bond market or in the real estate market. And that's why it's so important to build this portfolio around your overall risk tolerance. Give you some peace of mind so you don't have to stare at the TV all day. When it's red, it doesn't help to look at it. Doesn't make it green by staring at it, right?
No, indeed not. Chris, we're going to be talking today about the anatomy of a retirement plan and how all the pieces fit together. And flashing back to anatomy class, we've got the vascular system, the muscular system, the nervous system, the skeletal system. All the systems are interconnected. The body would not function without one of those. And I think that sort of plays into that tip of the week there, that access to the market is a vital component of financial progress. It absolutely is important. And most people have had that access, received maybe a little bit of guidance on how to utilize that access, but have not looked at how all of these different elements, all of these different systems of Social Security and taxation and healthcare expenses and creating income interplay to create a cohesive body of work, a true game plan for retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're building this game plan for retirement, just like building a house, we're going to start with a foundation, right? We want something that's rock solid, if you will. And I'm up here in the lime center of the world, so we literally are on rock up here. We want that to be able to withstand anything. It's got to hold the rest of the portfolio up, if you will. So a nice solid foundation. And then what kind of lifestyle do we want to support with that? As we build this plan, is it, money that you just really want to pass on to your children and grandkids because you live off of pensions and Social Security, right? Not everybody's that fortunate, obviously, in 2026. So, do we need to structure that portfolio so that you have reliable income off of it and, passing assets on to children and grandchildren might be, the second priority, not the first priority, as an example.
Yep. Well, we will talk about how to coordinate all the elements, all the aspects, and reflect your individual and personalized goals. That is what the game plan for retirement will help you do, is to understand all of these elements that need to work together, that need to be cohesive, that are coordinated in order to further your progress toward those goals, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to get your game plan for retirement put together, that is a complimentary, courtesy, no cost, no obligation service that Chris McIntire McIntire and the team from McIntire Retirement Services offer as a part of the program for being a listener or viewer. Just give a call to start a conversation and then have a meeting with Chris. And you can do that over the phone, virtually, in person. In person, often preferred there for a conversation about your money. But you then will get the plan put together for you, an outline of your situation, a summary synopsis of where you are now, the starting point, a summary of where your goals want to be, where you would like those goals to take you, and then how your money can work to help you achieve and accomplish that. All you need to do, again, to get started is have that conversation. Give a call, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. 419-332-0532. Chris, if any one of these elements is optimized, fantastic. But if they are not coordinated, you are not getting the most out of your plan. So we need it all to come together. And like a building, a structure, oftentimes we have to start from the ground up, right? The foundation is maybe the most important part. The purpose and the goal of the plan is really where the foundation is built upon.
Yeah, yeah, without a question there, Peter. And, I mean, up here we get storms, you get storms where you live, and sometimes we get a shingles blow off and we got to patch the roof. And that same thing happens in retirement plans, right? Stock market volatility can cause a disruption for, a year, sometimes longer if we go back to 2000, 2001, 2002. So, having that safe money strategy, we can't emphasize the importance of that. And we say that on the heels of some remarkable stock market growth. But as we know, look, those things can change pretty quickly here. It's a roller coaster ride. And I say that we live right next to Cedar Point Amusement Park here. And, lots of, you look at some of those roller coasters over there, they go up just about 90 degrees, but they also drop about 90 degrees. So, things can happen like that for sure. So, and most of the people as they go into retirement, they want to find that balance in risk, right? Not everybody wants 100% of their money in equities. They want some peace of mind. And, as you go through pulling money out of your portfolio, trying to minimize those sharp drawdowns in like the stock market, are very important when money's coming out of it. Most of you, if you're still working like Peter and myself, those are buying opportunities for us. But when the money's going the other direction, that can cause some significant harm. And, we've talked about sequence risk. I think just even on last week's show or the week before, we were talking about that, Peter.
Yeah.
But yeah, tying all these things in, the pension options, the Social Security timing, especially for a husband and wife here, obviously, with some of these things, because you have survivor benefits, and do we, as we're looking at this income generation, do we add an annuity that can give you a lifetime income as well? Some of them have the ability to increase that income. Some of you listening today have some rental properties that, you get a lot of write-offs on your taxes with that, but you also get some nice rental income. That's not my thing. I don't want to own any rental properties, but, I've got clients that have been very successful with rentals for 30, 40 years, and, they don't mind that. It gives them something to do, go over there and, fix the sinks and stuff like that on a Saturday night. That ain't me, man.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody needs a purpose and to tinker with something, Chris. So, speaking of those roller coasters, though, Chris, I used to be a roller coaster fan. Went with my son to an amusement park. Decided I'm not as big of a fan as I used to be. I could ride a couple of them. I used to be able to ride all day. I could ride a couple of them, and then I sort of decided, well, that's probably enough roller coasters for me for the day. But those big climbs and those big drops, fun on a roller coaster, not so fun when you're talking about looking at your money in the stock market sometimes.
Yeah, you got that right, Peter. And it's on the way up. It can be nerve wracking, but at least you're going up. And if you're, we're comparing that to the stock market. That's it can be nerve wracking on the roller coaster, but it's fun to watch your portfolio go up. And then on the downside, that's where it's fun on the roller coaster because here you go down. That is not the fun So it's almost the opposite of the effect of your portfolio growing versus a roller coaster, of course. But we talk about investments. Do we need investments for growth? Do we need investments for income? Do we need investments for the liquidity options, right? We can buy and sell stocks and mutual funds and exchange traded funds all day long. So, a lot of times there's some characteristics that we can get out of investments. We can get safety, growth, and liquidity, okay? But you can't have all of those combined typically, right? You're going to get, safety and you're going to give up growth. Okay. You're going to get liquidity from buying stocks, but you're not going to get safety. So typically you can get two of those three. And that's why you have to have an alternative plan, and for some of you, it's a money market or a CD at the bank. Some of you, it might be an annuity that you're using, just the fixed or the fixed index annuity, I should say in particular. Variable annuities are invested directly in the stock market. So just to clarify that, Peter.
Yep. Well, I know, Chris, the first part, again, the foundation, we have to define our purpose and goals. And as you said, money can accomplish only one or two of several different factors for us: that growth, that safety, that liquidity. And at some point in time, we need an income. The income is really the engine for retirement. It's not just retirement, it's been the engine for our entire financial lives. We have to have the income in order to pay our bills and pay our taxes and spend and then save and invest. But the income is what everything relies on. So that's what makes the motion. That's what goes. And in retirement, we still are going to want to pay our bills and pay our taxes and spend. And only through our investments is that possible. But that income, Chris, you've mentioned a few different sources here: Social Security, pensions, and annuities can generate a specific type of guaranteed lifetime income. And I think people understand the value of Social Security, what that provides, the safety, the security, what pensions used to for many provide. Now that the private sector generally doesn't have many companies that provide pensions any longer. Government still in some aspects does. But those annuities, Chris, there are several different strategies with annuities. There's kind of a shorter term, protect the principal, live off the interest approach, maybe for just a period of years where we can get some attractive interest rates, even compared to CDs or bank accounts. And then there is a maximum income for a lifetime guarantee. Can you talk about those two different strategies of the protect the principal, live off the interest, more shorter term versus a lifetime guarantee of income, and the value of either one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do a lot of business in short-term, multi-year guaranteed annuity. So, one what we've been using here lately with a particular company, I'm not going to name it, go into anything like that, is, a 3-year, 5% fixed rate of return. Okay. So, it very short term, we're in it for a growth piece, tax deferral, that type of thing. And then when we deal with somebody that wants to roll over a pension that they might have from their employer, and they say, well, look, the problem with the pension I have with my employer is if my wife and I both pass away, everything ceases. There's no more payments. Said, so we may say, look, I still want the lifetime income. What can we do with it? So we might look at a longer term fixed index annuity linked to the stock market performance with a lifetime guarantee. So it's paying you out guaranteed money, contractually guaranteed, on the full faith and credit of the issuing company, obviously. And then, you also still have the money invested. So if you pass away, whatever's left in the annuity would pay out to your beneficiaries. So, so multi-year guarantee annuities would be just what we would call like a fixed annuity. The fixed index annuity, we're trying to participate in some of the growth of the stock market performance, but protecting the principal if the market goes down. So, we kind of call it a safe investment, if you will. I got to pick my terms carefully here.
Well, and disclaimer language is that the guarantees are always backed by the strength of the company, right? The guarantees are backed by the strength, and claims paying ability of the issuing company is kind of the standard disclaimer language. But Chris, when Wall Street has told us for more than 3 decades, like 35, 40 years, that we should be able to take a 4% cash flow and hopefully not see our lump sum depleted and exhausted over retirement, versus we could get all of our money back after 3 or 5 years and generate a 5% cash flow. Like, it seems like a pretty reasonable alternative, even if it is not a permanent solution, to at least look at that and consider it.
Yeah, and if we, kind of broaden this out just a little bit, and say, look, if you're not an annuity kind of person, you say, look, I'm going to put $1 million in my investment portfolio and pull 4% out of it. Okay. Well, what happens when the market gets volatile and your portfolio now has $800,000 in it? 4% of that's 32,000, right?
My
So
bills didn't go down because the market went down, though. I still
correct.
I still need my 40.
Yeah, so and if we've got obviously, the more money you have, the more flexibility we can utilize and build that solid income plan with your Social Security and a nice annuity payment, and then let your investments be investments. Maybe you can even be a little bit more aggressive over the long haul because you're meeting your income needs with other sources. So you're actually freeing up more of your money to participate in the stock market growth versus having to invest very carefully because you can't afford to take a drop. Okay. So, just, when we show that to clients, they're like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yep. We're not tying money up in my annuity. We're freeing up my investment account, basically.
Yeah. Now, Chris, compare that though. If we didn't want to worry about repricing things or reconsidering what interest rates and payout rates are in 3 to 5 years. We wanted to maximize the potential for lifetime income with the certainty that we won't run out. This is a different type of annuity strategy, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there are a number of different ways we can structure these. So there is the fixed index annuity with an income rider that we use quite a bit. What we've been talking about. There are deferred income annuities where you put a lump sum in and you expect to take a payout down the road, and the longer you wait, the more income that pays out. So, a number of different strategies. And, we've been seeing Congress and legislation being introduced to allow people to invest in annuities in their 401k so that they can see how much income that they're going to have when they retire, instead of, the way it's set up right now. Most people are, I've got my big fat 401k here. Now what?
Yeah. And I think that those statements where they do show a projection for income on the portal or on the 401k statement, Chris, are often very misleading. If you read the fine print, not only do they assume a growth rate that may or may not be reliable, but they also often include the Social Security incorporated and wrapped into that number. Like, it's not even just that account. They're talking about what are the projections for the total retirement income. And I think that a lot of people not only don't know that and misconstrue that as just the 401k account by itself, but also that's a gross number. We still have to factor in taxes, right? This is where the anatomy of the plan and all of the pieces interconnecting starts to really show why it's important. What is the
Yeah,
bottom line?
Yeah, that good point, Peter, to bring up the tax side of things. So, somebody says, hey, I got $1 million in the 401k and I need to pull out 4% a year to live off of. I'm like, okay, is that before or after taxes? Well, that would be after taxes. Okay, so maybe we need to pull out 6%, not 4, because we got to pay Uncle Sam because he hasn't been paid yet. And that's where your Roth 401ks and Roth IRAs help, because those are tax-free distributions. But in all reality, Peter, as probably 95% of the money we deal with has never been taxed at all. Roth IRAs are getting more and more common, and Roth 401ks with the younger generation than they are with the boomers who are 65 and 70 years old right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Chris, it has not been a mistake to build up our dollars in these tax deferred accounts. Many people have done a great job of that and have taken advantage of tax deferral. It's just that now is the time to start thinking about how to manage and minimize that tax. And that again is a conversation that a lot of people have not really had when they've talked about, well, how do I invest my money? What are the funds with the best returns? They've been given that access to the market. They have not talked about the ultimate tax implications, how to manage, how to minimize, how to control those taxes down the road.
Yeah, yep, exactly right. And the reason tax strategies are so important is, I'll use myself and my wife as an example. Okay, my wife is 65 years old on Social Security, transitioned on to Medicare. Okay, so saving us on the health insurance side by all means, being on Medicare than it is buying traditional insurance. Okay, because we're self-employed. Okay, on the Social Security side, because of the business income and whatnot that we've had and a little bit of success, if you will, they take out nearly $600 a month out of her Social Security benefit for the Medicare premiums. Most people listening to the show today are retired, probably, who are pulling their Social Security, and they may only be paying out $200 a month. Okay. But if you go out and buy that condo down in Fort Myers Beach, like many people here in Ohio do, we're not allowed on the ocean side of Florida up here, Peter. We have to go to the Gulf side. But and you pull out a substantial chunk of change out of your 401k for a down payment, as an example, then all of a sudden you get a notice saying, hey, your Medicare premiums are going to increase, and the more income you have, the more that they increase. So there are some traps that you have to pay attention to, and one of them is your Medicare premiums. Social Security being taxed is getting more and more common because the thresholds for taxation of Social Security benefits does not adjust with inflation. So more and more people pay tax on their Social Security benefit, which in all reality goes back in to help keep the trust fund solvent, or the Social Security system solvent, not just the trust fund.
Yep. Again, we are talking with Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. You have questions about how to make sure all of your systems are connected and coordinated and firing in unison to make sure that you are moving forward toward achieving your goals. The anatomy of your retirement plan is all connected. Pick up the phone, give a call, because Chris will help you put together your game plan for retirement. No cost, no obligation. If you call from today's show, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. Chris, we talked about the foundation of the plan is the purpose and the goals. The income is the engine. The investments are the fuel source. Risk management is protecting the system. We've got to have some risk management, and then taxes, the invisible drain. And when you mentioned the invisible drain, I imagined one of those ladies that carries the big baskets of water on their head. Follow me here. Go with me for a second. If that is our retirement savings, we can't really see it. It's up on our head, right? And it's got a hole in it that's leaking out. What most people are trying to do is time it just right so that there's still some water left after 30 years, that it's leaking out only at a rate so much that we can make sure that the water in the jug lasts for 30 years. That is a very difficult task to balance. And then when you add the taxes and those costs and the potential for healthcare or bigger expenses in, that becomes very, very hard without a sound plan. And the plan is what gives you the view of the water from an outside perspective and helps to refill it.
Yeah, yep. And some of these things, Peter, happen much later in life. My mom's 88 in a nursing home. My dad's 92 in the hospital as we're recording the show and doing okay. But think of at age 88, the cost of 1 month in a nursing home. After you've been using your money for many, many years. And depending on how you invested it, different degrees of success. And do you have more later in retirement than you did earlier because of being thrifty or whatever? But $10,000 to $12,000 a month in a nursing home can certainly drain it. That doesn't happen early in retirement typically happens later. So, updating your estate plan and making sure that, like Peter says, you're plugging those holes where things can leak out of. And, most people that are listening to the show here, I probably would say everybody listening to the show today, if you have a house or even if you rent about an apartment or a condo, you have insurance on that, okay, in
Sure.
case it burns down. Well, there's a 1 in 1,200 chance that's going to happen, yet you are paying to mitigate that risk of something that is very unlikely to happen. Okay. Most people listening to this radio show right now or our podcast do not have long-term care insurance. And 50% of the people listening to the show will spend some time in a nursing home.
Much more likely. And yet very, very few people have taken the step to protect themselves against it, Chris.
Yep, something that is very likely to happen to, a husband or a wife, and and have said, I hope it doesn't happen to us. So,
Yeah. And
so
Chris, when it happens to either one of them, both people suffer.
yeah, and so do your beneficiaries and everything like that too, because that might have been money they were looking that they were going to get, and now you can't give it to them because you have lookbacks and all that. Trust me, I could probably write a book on that, but we use some nice resources from some of the local attorneys that help us when we have to have clients walk through that process of how can we save. We don't have any other alternatives. How
I,
can we save some of this?
I smile, Chris, as you mentioned that, because I can hear a lot of people's thoughts. Well, I don't care about leaving it to the kids. They get what they get. Fair enough. Like, I don't feel like that's selfish. But if you have not done a detailed analysis of the legacy and the legacy planning and the estate planning, what happens next might be that the IRS or the nursing home becomes your largest beneficiary. And I don't think that's anyone's wish or intention above leaving some of their hard work for assets to their family, to their loved ones.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And going through some loved ones passing away and whatnot, you see where a lot of the holes in these estate plans come into play. I mean, you can have a trust, all you want, but the assets have to be listed in the trust or titled in the trust for that to for that to take effect. And your bank accounts payable on death, transfer on death for brokerage accounts, beneficiary designations, a lot of those things are pretty simple 101. And it all ties into this overall plan that we've got, from starting out early in retirement to when do I take my Social Security, what's my investment strategy early in retirement versus later in retirement, what's the tax plan here, are we going to do Roth conversions, what are we going to do about long-term care and in the nursing home, and do you have your powers of attorney, your wills, living wills, and documents like that. Let's plug these holes up here. And, it takes sometimes some dollars to plug those holes, but boy, it certainly keeps water from making that hole bigger and whatnot. I'm trying to keep with this
Yeah,
water
yeah, yeah.
analogy.
Well, Chris, we began the program talking about how most people that you talk to have done a good job in not only working hard to earn a living, putting in their skill and their labor and their intelligence and into their craft to earn income. But most people have had access to the market and have utilized that well to build up some accounts, but that there are still holes and the plan is not complete because the different systems, the anatomy of the plan is not interconnected. What are some of the more common gaps or areas that are overlooked that you tend to see when you're helping somebody who has even done a good job with the investment aspect?
Yeah, definitely the long-term care side of things. Without question, that's the first one. And then probably number two would be not taking advantage of Roth conversion opportunities that they have. Okay. Very friendly tax environment right now, especially with the passing of the one big beautiful bill, got better for retirees, okay, more so than it did younger folks. And again, plugging some of those holes, we encourage them, look, you've got bank accounts at 3 different banks, make sure those are payable on death. Keep that stuff out of probate. It makes it easy. And those are probably the 3 most common that come to mind right now that, if they've been successful investors, obviously. And, look, when it comes to investing, Peter, you can make a mistake being too aggressive, just like you can make a mistake being too conservative. And, for people that retire early, maybe in their late 50s, as that's what I mean by early. And, I mean, they got a long time to go there. So that timing of that Social Security and, does taking it at 62 make sense for everybody? By no means. And again, these decisions aren't right or wrong because none of us know the day we're going to pass away. That would certainly makes them, we can work backwards then on the math. But sometimes, we don't know some of those factors, and we deal with a lot of unknowns. So, trying to help people solve for the potential outcome of a bunch of unknowns is what we do.
Yeah. Well, a successful retirement plan, ladies and gentlemen, is not built on a single account, a single product, or a single strategy, nor is a single product, account, or strategy going to lead to continued success in all the aspects that need to be cohesive and coordinated to have your complete retirement plan. A coordinated system where every piece is balanced and addressed is essential. And that's what the game plan for retirement strives to help people to complete your plan, ladies and gentlemen, to see the areas that may have been overlooked or unaddressed and make sure that you are aware and addressing them efficiently and effectively. If you'd like to get your game plan for retirement put together, pick up the phone and give McIntire Retirement Services and Chris McIntire, your resource, a call, as so many across Northwestern Ohio have, but so many more people need to have that completed plan. 419-332-0532 is the number to call. 419-332-0532. 419-332-0532. Chris, always appreciate the perspective and breaking down different aspects and elements of planning, what needs to be important. Great conversation today about how all of them kind of work together and are codependent.
Yep. And the funny thing is we're helping my parents deal with a lot of this as we're at, today's topic. So I get passionate about a few of these things. We want to help people avoid some of the pitfalls. That's what we're after, Peter.
Of course. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get your game plan for retirement put together, pick up the phone, give McIntire Retirement Services a call, 419-332-0532, or online at McIntireRetirementServices.com, 419-332-0532, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Chris, always a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks you. Thanks, Peter. Take care, everybody. God bless America.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.